My name is Aubrey Page and I'm an FASD educator. We need to think about FASD differently because as long as we continue to believe the myths and lies that FASD only affects a certain population or that it's rare, we will not help and support the children and adults who need it. Those children and adults won't have the good outcomes that we're looking for in our society. We want them to be successful, have fulfilling lives, and we won't see that as long as we continue to imagine that FASD is rare.
In individuals with FASD, prenatal alcohol exposure has damaged the development of the brain and other organs. People with FASD think and behave differently, so we must adapt how we parent, teach and support them to meet their needs. The best way to help them succeed is to nurture their unique strengths and talents. Think brain, not blame.
Hi, my name is Debbie and I live in the United States, and I'm here to talk to you today to answer the question why we need to think differently about FASD or fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. One of the reasons is that individuals with FASD sometimes are different developmentally than their chronological age. So it's very important that we think of stage rather than age and provide the supports and accommodations they need to be successful at that stage.
Hi, this is Jeff from the FASD Success Show podcast. We need to think differently about FASD because when we think differently, we do differently. We need to stop thinking that individuals on the spectrum are lazy, unmotivated, their behavior is willful or purposeful. We also need to think differently about parents, that they're bad parents, that they don't care, that they're not trying hard enough, that they're not doing enough at home. We need to shift our thinking and realize that individuals on the spectrum aren't bad. Parents aren't bad, both are misunderstood. When we stop and start to think differently, we can do differently, and we will know that parents are trying their hardest, individuals are trying their hardest, and they all just want to do well.
When we consider FASD, we can consider different lenses. If we focus solely on the behavioural lens, we are too focused on correcting the child's behavioural presentation. But if we look at our child through the disability lens, we're recognizing that they're finding things difficult, and we can then focus on what we personally do to accommodate their needs by adjusting the environment and adding in positive support. Lenses make a real difference.
We need to think differently about FASD because although it's a lifelong condition, with the right support, individuals can be successful throughout their lives. FASD is the most common known cause of neurodevelopmental disorders and birth defects in the UK, with particularly high rates among those who are care experienced. Among other things, FASD can affect memory, executive functioning, emotional regulation, and impulsivity. Individuals with FASD can experience associated difficulties such as risky behaviour and poor mental health. But imagine a society where we help people to overcome these challenges rather than misunderstand and penalise them for having them. We need to remove all stigma associated with prenatal alcohol exposure, and I would like to see the fantastic work established by the FASD Hub Scotland replicated across the UK. That's why Adoption UK is calling for a step change in the assessment, diagnosis and support for everyone concerned about the effects of prenatal alcohol exposure. We all need to think differently about FASD.
Why do we need to think differently about FASD? There's a growing understanding of the prevalence and needs of individuals with FASD, but we still have a long way to go. We need to think differently and better support professionals to work with expectant parents to get the message across and inform them about the risks of alcohol during pregnancy. We also need to get better at gathering any evidence where there is some of prenatal alcohol exposure. In doing this, we can help to reduce the barriers that parents and carers of care experienced children can face in seeking a diagnosis for their child, while simultaneously reducing the stigma that biological parents might face when discussing the risks and implications of alcohol during pregnancy. In thinking differently and better supporting professionals to work with parents and carers and families with FASD, we can help to support them through the diagnostic process and on to getting the support and access to help that their families need.
Hi, my name is Anne Bell and I'm the Director for Adoption UK in Wales. and I want to talk about FASD. In fact, I'd like us all to talk a lot more about FASD. We know that there are far more people with FASD than there are with autism, and particularly in the adopted children's population, we know that there are a lot of children who could get a diagnosis of FASD, and yet we very, very rarely talk about that. Why is that?
I'm EJ Haviland, the Director of Adoption UK in Northern Ireland, and I'm asking you to think differently about FASD. A shift in thinking is needed to work alongside those with FASD. Some children cannot do some things. What they need is our support, understanding and empathy. By thinking differently, we improve the outcomes for your child. Much more positives are celebrated, and overall you'll have a better family life. So what's not to love about that? Let's think differently about FASD.
FASD is an invisible disability, and only a really small percentage of children have the facial features often associated with it. But in actual fact, it might affect up to 6% of children living in Scotland. FASD does not as yet have the same profile as autism or ADHD. We need to raise the profile and raise awareness of the fact that there is no safe level of alcohol consumption while women are pregnant.
We have to think differently about FASD because change is coming on a big scale, and all that old school thinking and all that negativity, we need to sweep it away, because we know that with the right support, with early diagnosis, with people around the family understanding FASD, things can really change and brighter futures are possible. It's so important that we have hope and that we have a community of people working together to bring about the change that we know is possible. And a big thank you to our friends at FASD Hub Scotland for all the important work that they do. Happy FASD month, everyone.
Why do we need to have a discussion around FASD? And why do we need to think differently around FASD? Well, first of all, it's a serious public health issue. There is still a huge stigma that is attached to FASD, and as a result, this has a detrimental effect on the lives of those living with FASD and their carers. In addition, there's still a blame culture around birth mothers of individuals with FASD, and yet there is not enough information being delivered on the risks involved in drinking alcohol during pregnancy.
Here's why we need to change the conversation about FASD and change how we think about FASD. FASD is the leading cause of developmental disabilities in the Western world. Yet it is the most undiagnosed, underdiagnosed, and misdiagnosed of all the developmental disabilities. We need to change this conversation. We need legislation, we need supports, we need services, and most of all, we need awareness and understanding of FASD. So please, change the conversation. Let's change about how we think about FASD. Thank you so much for listening.
Hi guys, this is Mary Ellen
and Paula.
We're from OJ's FASD, and we're going to tell you about what we think our takeaway for FASD Awareness Day on the 9th of September is. Paula, what's your takeaway?
So my takeaway is the adults need to change around the child because the child can't change. Yeah.
Really? Do we need to do that? Is that what we need to do? So yeah, adults, we need to change because your kids are telling us that they can't change, not won't change, they can't. So thank you. Bye.
Bye.
We need to think differently about FASD because 1 in 13 infants exposed to alcohol prenatally will have FASD. 1,700 infants a day, or 630,000 a year, are born with FASD. It is the most common developmental disability, yet it is the least known. It's often misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all. Because few people have physical features, most people think behavior not symptoms, and default to punishment, not support and accommodations. People with FASD have many strengths and a unique perspective on life. When we continue to think only typical, we miss so much creativity and awesomeness in the differences. And that's why we need to think differently about FASD.
People with FASD are amazing, so please think differently.